we continue these weekly insights, I want to explain the path that we will be following. I want to lead you through a journey along the elements needed for spiritual growth. And I'll be following a book. The author is an acclaimed professor of spirituality in Spain, Antonio Royo Marin. He's the author of a masterpiece called Theology of Christian Perfection. I will be following his outline, but I will not limit myself to his content. I will build on that. Most of these reflections constitute what I have learned from different excellent authors, and I have incorporated into my own life. In a sense, my own synthesis. However, I have found Royo Marin's structure very useful. Then we will divide our insights in three main parts. The first one is going to be about the fundamental principles of Christian living. And so first, we're going to talk about the purpose of our life. What on earth are we here for? We also talk about the nature of God. God as being love, the nature of the divine Trinity. And then we'll talk about our imitation of Christ, the role of Christ in our life, our relationship with Him. We will also talk about the role of the Blessed Virgin Mary and of the Church. Then comes the second part. And in the second part, we talk about grace, the organism of grace, like a divine seed that is planted in our hearts that is called to blossom. And so first, we're going to talk about what is grace as a supernatural gift that God gives us. How does it grow in our life? What's the role of grace in our sanctification, in our spiritual growth? We will realize that we cannot grow spiritually based on our own efforts alone. The primacy of grace and how we cooperate with grace, and how there is a universal call to Christian perfection, to spiritual growth, and to Christian maturity, inner spiritual growth. Finally, in the third part, we'll talk about the normal development of our Christian living. And this is going to be the longest part. Here we will divide it in two aspects. One being the negative aspect and the other one the positive aspects. And the negative aspect, not because it is bad in itself. We're talking about what we have to remove, what we need to, in a sense, fight against. We fight against sin. We fight against our selfishness. We also fight against anything that could be leading us away from spiritual growth. And here, traditionally speaking, in the history of Christianity, we talk about the fight against the world. In what sense? Jesus talked about the world sometimes in negative terms. Everything that God created is good, yes. But what does the bad environment mean? We talk about the role of demons, and we talk about our own wounded nature. Then we continue talking about abnegation, purification of the mind, purification of the will, purification of our faculties, of the senses, and then some purifications that God does by Himself. We can never achieve total purification by our own efforts again. And then lastly, we talk about the positive aspect of our spiritual growth, the sacraments, as sources of grace. But we also talk about the development of virtue and what are infused virtues and the role of the Holy Spirit in the development of these virtues and the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Kind of like He's almost taking over, but we allow that. And then we talk about the life of prayer, starting with vocal prayer and then growth into mental prayer or meditation, and then affective prayer, prayer in simplicity, contemplative prayer. And then we will discuss about some other means for our spiritual growth, internal means, like the practice of the presence of God, our examination of conscience, our desire for Christian growth, and some other external means, like the program of reform of life, spiritual reading, holy friendships, the apostolate, spiritual direction. This and much more is to come. I hope that you get to enjoy this journey together.